Hey y'all, it's Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis on September 4th. It is Labor Day weekend here in the United States, which means I don't have to work on Monday. Woo! But that also means that the weather is still hot. You know, we still got plenty of growing season left for the Catasetums and for the Cattleyas. And today I want to chat with you. I want to do kind of a mixture of things. I want to do a little bit of a show and tell for this plant here, which is called Cattleya Leoloddiglossa. And then I also want to do sort of a cautionary tale about repotting bifoliate Cattleyas at the wrong time, and talk about some of the consequences of doing that don't include the death of the plant, which in some ways can actually be more annoying. So first of all, let's start with this guy. This, like I said, is Cattleya Leoloddiglossa. And so if we break up that word into Leo, Loda, and Glossa, you get the names of the three parents of this plant. And so Leo stands for Leopoldii, Loda stands for Lodiglossa, and Glossa stands for Amethystoglossa. And so now you understand a little bit about the background or the parental history of this plant. We have three bifoliates, and the parents for this particular plant were all coerulea. As we know, coerulea is recessive, so it is not very common, but one of the unique attributes of this cross, which does come from Sunset Valley orchids over there in California, so Fred Clark's breeding, they're consistently blue, they're consistently coerulea, so that means that the parents were coeruleas, since it is so recessive. If a typical or a tipo colored flower were introduced into this breeding line, this guy would be pink. But it is a typical bifoliate in that it is extremely fragrant. You know, it's got these sort of very waxy petals and sepals, and we've got spots, and we've got a column here that's enclosed by the side lobes, and then of course this sort of hard plastic lip. And like I said, the fragrance is really one of the best parts of this one. As always, I grow this in very bright conditions, clay pots, large grade Orchiata bark, and my slow release fertilizer, which is Jim's Purely Organic, has pretty much run out for the year. Almost all these little baskets around the grow space are empty. I probably won't refill them either until maybe December, and I'll sort of spot check the plants that are still actively growing. In fact, most of my bifoliates typically grow all through the winter. If you keep watering them and you don't give them a really dry period, that typically kicks them in overdrive for growing all year long. So, which is a pretty good segue into what I want to talk about now. So, I had mentioned earlier that this was not only a show and tell, but sort of a cautionary tale about repotting bifoliate Cattleyas. So what you want to do with all Cattleyas is to really watch for the roots of the new growths to start peeking out of the sort of new growth, the bottom of the new growth down here. That's when you want to repot your plant. This is especially important with bifoliate Cattleyas. Unifoliates are a little more forgiving, but you know, at the worst, your plant could die even if it is a unifoliate, or it could just set it back a season. With bifoliates, if you repot at the wrong time, there's a really high probability that you'll kill the plant. And if it doesn't die, it's going to do what this guy did, which is shrink, basically just not do anything for 4 or 5 years. So it's taking about 4 years to get this measly 2 bloom spike to come out. When I got this division from my friend, it was much taller. You can't even see. I've got the plant next to me. It was probably about this tall. So it's sort of a standard, you know, if you know anything about Leopoldii, which of course is now called Tigrina, and Amethystoglossa, and even Lodiglossa is taller than this. You know that the parents of this get pretty tall, and so does this particular species, this particular hybrid. So you can see that this back bulb was fairly tall and it's almost dead, so I'll pull it off, but the previous back bulbs were much taller, and you'll notice, look how small these growths got in between. So they've steadily been getting larger and larger and larger and larger and not blooming, and then larger until it finally bloomed. So basically, this thing turned into a seedling all over again and then had to build its way back to a blooming size plant. So when I say that it's almost more annoying to have a plant do this than to just straight up die, it's because I'm not getting blooms for 4 or 5 years, which if I had simply just purchased a 2-inch seedling, the same thing would have happened. So, you know, when you buy a division, you're kind of jump starting. Ideally, you're jump starting your flowering regime by getting an older plant. It's going to bloom quicker, ideally, and so you don't have to wait as long. And typically, that's sort of a cost-benefit analysis. If you're going to pay a lot more money for a blooming size division, ideally it blooms for you like the year after you buy it, and doesn't do what this did and shrink back down to a 2-inch seedling and then slowly get taller. So like I said, this is a cautionary tale talking about how you really want to pay attention to the status of the roots on the new growth before you repot a bifoliate Cattleya. That said, I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm just gonna put this here in a place where you can enjoy it. And I will see y'all later. And for the third time, I do want to mention it's fragrant, really nice. So